Had Fox News existed and been essentially the state-run TV during the Nixon era, there might not have been an impeachment of Richard Nixon. But there is this whole echo chamber that supports whatever the president says. What I find so astounding about the last year is how much this deeply flawed president could remake an entire political party in his own image.
And now tanks in the streets. You know, I mean, I laugh too. I mean, it's a funny premise. Comedian, we like a premise like that, ha ha ha. But it's not really funny. The idea, because you should not get used to the look of tanks in the streets.
Adam Schiff is not only a stone cold, hopeless loser, but he is one of the most corrupt, one of the most shameful, one of the most heinous individuals ever to serve in public office in America. And everything he's devoted his life to has been debunked, discredited, and discarded. He literally represents the face of failure. His sole achievement in life was fighting a losing war against Donald Trump, and now President Trump is in the White House, and Adam Schiff is the leader of a dying and dethroned.
Last time I showed you how Trump called out Representative Adam Schiff for his double standards, but what I didn't get to show you was Trump slamming Schiff for brewing a storm in a teacup. Classic Schiff. You see, the Democrats and the woke left have made it their mission to take down Trump by spreading fear and panic. But here's the twist. Bill Maher, yes, that Bill Maher, longtime ally of Schiff's, is finally waking up to the madness and calling them out and trust. May the fallout is explosive if you haven't already hit that subscribe button. And let's dive in.
We do need to be mindful of the much bigger challenge facing the country right now. And that is there is a systematic undermining of our system of checks and balances. Brick by brick, the walls are being taken down. The wall between the White House and the Justice Department, the way we are demeaning the press, and as you say, we're suggesting that there is no such thing as objective fact anymore. The way the administration says that a judge that rules against us is illegitimate. These are ways in which they're doing enormous damage to our system.
Right out of the gate, Schiff shifts into fifth gear, tearing into Trump's administration for supposedly undermining the press and the justice system. But that's rich coming from Schiff, considering what the Biden administration did to press when they held the reins. I vividly remember people being canceled and deplatformed simply for expressing their views. Seems like Schiff conveniently forgot all that. And now he's making a mountain out of a molehill just because his party isn't in power. Fortunately, Bill Maher is right there to hand him a much-needed reality check.
And now tanks in the streets. You know, I mean, I laugh too. I mean, it's a funny premise. Comedian, we like a premise like that, ha ha ha. But it's not really funny. The idea, because you should not get used to the look of tanks in the streets. We don't have that look in America. When I've seen that look anywhere else in the world, it's never been good. And to me, this is like, let's get them used to that. Tanks in the streets.
Bill Maher doesn't hold back. He tells Adam Schiff point blank that things aren't nearly as apocalyptic as he and his allies make them out to be in classic Maher fashion. He calls out Schiff and the left-leaning media for shameless fear-mongering, especially their wild claims that Trump could unleash tanks in the streets to intimidate political opponents. Really, tanks, Maher, clearly fed up with the hysteria, reminds Schiff that this kind of doomsday imagery doesn't just hurt the Democrats, it poisons public discourse and undermines trust in the democratic process. Maher's point is simple, but devastating, exaggerating threats for political gain only feeds polarization and hands Trump more ammunition. If Democrats keep crying wolf, Maher warns voters might stop listening altogether. And when real danger shows up, no one's going to take them seriously. It's a brutal reality check. And Schiff didn't seem ready for it. Why? Because he's neck deep in Trump derangement syndrome. Check this out.
The most difficult to deal with is the fact that people now simply get their information from different sources. Had Fox News existed and been essentially the state-run TV during the Nixon era, there might not have been an impeachment of Richard Nixon. But there is this whole echo chamber that supports whatever the president says. What I find so astounding about the last year is how much this deeply flawed president could remake an entire political party in his own image.
Schiff didn't just go after the former president. He also took aim at Fox News for daring to deviate from his worn-out fact-challenge narrative. And that right there is a problem with Schiff and his political companions. They can't stand opposing views the moment someone steps out of line or questions their version of events. They're met with ridicule, name calling, and outright demonization. It's a classic tactic: discredit the messenger, instead of addressing the message Schiff and his ilk would. Rather silence dissent and debate at Fox News. Love it or hate, it represents a sizable chunk of the American public's perspective. By vilifying the network simply for offering a counterpoint, Schiff reveals exactly what his camp fears most: losing control of the narrative. And when that control slips, so does their grip on public trust. Fox News didn't take it lightly when Schiff fingered them even before Maher issued a response. They fired back. I'll soon play you Maher's response, but first listen to this brutal verbal takedown.
Adam Schiff is not only a stone cold, hopeless loser, but he is one of the most corrupt, one of the most shameful, one of the most heinous individuals ever to serve in public office in America. And everything he's devoted his life to has been debunked, discredited, and discarded. He literally represents the face of failure. His sole achievement in life was fighting a losing war against Donald Trump, and now President Trump is in the White House, and Adam Schiff is the leader of a dying and dethroned movement.
We all remember how spectacularly Adam Schiff failed in his mission to keep Donald Trump out of the White House. As a top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee, Schiff positioned himself as the face of the resistance, but his efforts ultimately unraveled under the weight of exaggeration and partisanship. He repeatedly claimed to have seen direct evidence of Trump colluding with Russia, a claim that fell apart after Mueller report found no criminal conspiracy. Schiff didn't stop there. He cherry-picked statements from Republican colleagues, took quotes out of context, and used his platform to weave a narrative tailor-made for headlines, not truth, instead of presenting an objective case. He weaponized his committee role for political theater in doing so. He eroded trust in the process and fueled the very polarization he claimed to oppose. Critics weren't just skeptical, they saw a pattern of dishonesty cloaked in moral authority, and history hasn't been kind to that legacy.
There's nothing new. We just get to hear Adam Schiff lie and rant and stuff like that, ask for more witnesses when it was actually his job, and he decided not to do it.
Well, Senator, when you say there's nothing new, obviously Democrats would push back and say, let's hear from John Bolton. Let's see if what he said in that videotape last August, where he said the phone call sounded like he was almost saying it was perfect or cordial, went very well, as the president has suggested, with the Ukrainian president, or what he says in his book is true. Why not bring him in, hear something new, and settle this once and for all?
Well, first off, it'll never end. But they had a chance. The Democrats in the House had the chance to subpoena John Bolton. They're the ones that decided not to subpoena John Bolton. They're the ones that have decided to rush this case through, and then they said, oh, now we want you to go through the process of calling John Bolton.
Yep, that's what happens when your entire foundation is built on half-truths. And political theater Adam Schiff was practically begging for John Bolton to testify, touting him as a key to taking Trump down over his alleged role in the Ukraine crisis. Schiff made it sound like Bolton's testimony would be the smoking gun, but then when the opportunity finally came knocking, Schiff backed off. Why? Because it turns out he may have misrepresented what Bolton would actually say. It was a stunning about-face. The man who once demanded Bolton take the stand suddenly had cold feet. Why? Because if Bolton's testimony didn't align with Schiff's narrative, the whole impeachment charade could unravel, and Schiff couldn't afford that. Instead of risking exposure, he chose silence, proving once again that political survival trumps truth in his world. And the media, they let it slide as if selective outrage is somehow a legitimate political strategy, but the public is catching on and the double standards aren't going unnoticed anymore.
Adam Schiff lies again. What will the Senate do about it? Adam Schiff lied again. We'll get into this a little bit more detail. And Politico actually was the website, a very liberal website that broke the story. And the story is this. That an oligarch whose name began with Z, who had ties to Burisma, but in fact may have been the chief dog over at Burisma, an oligarch, that Adam Schiff was trying to tie Trump surrogates and Rudy Giuliani into pressuring the president of Ukraine, whose name begins with Z too. But it had nothing to do with the president of Ukraine. But Adam Schiff had made that representation yesterday on the floor of the Senate.
Remember, this one Adam Schiff's obsession with getting Trump out of the Oval Office led him down a rabbit hole of wild assumptions and desperate leaps in logic. At one point, Schiff concluded that a Russian oligarch must be connected to Trump simply because he had ties to Rudy Giuliani and get to share the same first letter of his name as a Ukrainian president. That was it. That was a grand smoking gun. How absurd is that? But Schiff didn't stop there. He went on to claim that Trump was somehow using this oligarch as a middleman to pressure the Ukrainian president into accepting some mysterious deal with Russia. No solid proof, no credible sources, just speculation wrapped in conspiracy. This wasn't investigative oversight. It was a political, which Hunt dressed up as foreign policy concern. Schiff weaponized coincidence and tried to pass it off as damning evidence, and in doing so, he once again proved that when it comes to Trump, facts take a backseat to theatrics, the result more division, less credibility, and a public that's increasingly tuning out the noise.
Okay, and finally, new rule. Someone must tell the usual suspects on the far left that the saying is, when you're in a hole, stop digging, not keep digging. Talk about doubling down on what got you fucked in the first place. Even the one concession I've heard a few people on the losing side offer, that liberals should stop saying the Trump voters are stupid, comes with a kind of unspoken parentheses. We know they are stupid, just don't say.
If I were Adam Schiff, I'd seriously consider dialing back the lies about Trump and finally seek some recovery from this chronic case of Trump derangement syndrome. Because let's be honest, that obsessive hatred is exactly what cost Democrats the White House in the first place. The nonstop attacks, the baseless narratives, the media echo chambered, all backfired. I'd stop writing off Trump voters as ignorant or brainwashed and start treating them with a little respect, not by pandering, but by being truthful, transparent, and grounded in reality. Because when you insult millions of Americans for simply voting differently, you don't win them over, you push them further away. It's time to stop preaching to choir and start listening to the crowd. Americans are tired of being talked down to. If Schiff and others in his camp actually want to lead, they should try honesty for a change. Truth is, Trump didn't break America. He just exposed who was pretending to hold it together. And if the left keeps doubling down on delusion, they'll keep losing the very people they claim to fight for.
I got bad news for you. They don't have a monopoly on stupid. You wear Queers for Palestine t-shirts and masks 2 years after the pandemic ended. And you can't define woman, I mean person who menstruates. You're the teachers' union education party, and you've turned schools and colleges into a joke. You just lost a crazy contest to an actual crazy person.
Maher brings up yet another reason why he believes Schiff and his allies lost the election. Their increasingly bizarre policies and fringe ideologies. At the top of that list, the left insistence that gender is entirely fluid, that a woman can become a man and vice versa. And yet somehow they couldn't even define what a woman is. That kind of mental gymnastics didn't just confuse people, it alienated them to the average American trying to raise a family, pay bills, and live with basic common sense. This stuff felt completely disconnected from reality. It wasn't progressive. It was absurd. People didn't see themselves in those talking points instead of inclusivity. It came off as elitist, overly academic, and wildly impractical. Maher points out that when you stop making sense of the average voter, you lose them fast. You can't claim to be the party of science and then refuse to answer simple biological questions. Voters noticed, rolled their eyes, and walked away, and now the left is shocked they've lost ground. Maybe it's time to stop blaming Trump and start rethinking the message. In the end, Schiff's theatrics, fear-mongering, and disconnect from everyday Americans backfired. Bill Maher's blunt reality checks expose the cracks in the left's narrative. If Democrats want to win again, they'll need less hysteria, more honesty, and a serious reality check. Because as it stands, voters aren't buying the drama. They're craving truth, clarity, and common sense. This brings us to the end of today's video. If you enjoyed our commentary on woke politics, then hit the like button and subscribe to this channel for more videos like this. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next.